What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here to take a look at the Detroit Lions financial situation a little bit. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Lions projected salary cap and how the Lions could save a little bit more money for free agency this offseason. Plus, we're going to take a little look at Josh Wood's contract as the details are now in. So let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. It's good to be back for another Lions video. And free agency, we're starting to talk about free agency a lot. The Lions have now made 2 re-signings through free agency. We're going to take a look at one of those contracts today. We know in a few weeks, we're going to start to have the opportunity to sign players from other teams. So that's about to get started. I thought this would be a good time to do a video like this to take a look at how the Lions could save some more money and where they are at financially before a ton of signings start to come in. I mean, we've already got 2 of them, so we're going to take a look at one of those contracts today. But we've already started talking about potential free agent targets. I mean, today we uploaded the video of Marcus Williams. So if you guys have not seen that, you definitely should check it out. Marcus Williams is worth a lot of the hype that he is getting. And plus, he's been kind of tagged to the Lions a few times because of some of the connections that we have with Marcus Williams. I mean, he is definitely a possible big name free agent target the Lions could have this offseason. But I thought this would be kind of a good base video, a good, video to do before we get into a lot of those big signings. But let's start off with this Josh Woods contract first and how the Lions set up Josh Woods' contract. We talked about it. The Lions re-signed Josh Woods to a 1-year deal this offseason. He was a restricted free agent, but they're bringing him back for another season. Before that, it was Jason Kabinda, who was re-signed to a 2-year deal. So I thought we'd take a look at the details of his contract. How much are the Lions paying Josh Woods? His base salary look like, all that kind of stuff. So we'll start there. Let's quickly take a look at Josh Woods' contract for this upcoming season. I was actually a little bit surprised. He was paid a little bit more than I was anticipating. Josh Woods is going to make $11 million this season. It's actually more than what Jared Goff is going to make. So it's a pretty expensive. No, I'm playing. Did I get you? No, I probably didn't get you with. All right, I tried. I don't know. I thought that'd be good. Probably should say like 34 million, but that would have been too high because you wouldn't have believed that at all. So if someone believed that, let me know. But no, Josh Woods, he still did make a little bit more than maybe I expected. Currently, his cap hit is a little bit over $1.5 million. We're looking at about $1.52 million according to Over the Cap for his cap hit of 2021. There are no void years. It's only a 1-year deal. Currently, his base salary sits at $1.2 million, but there is some guarantees in there. According to Over the Cap, it's about $500,000 guaranteed, $250,000 for the signing bonus, and a $100,000 per game bonus. That would mean about $750,000 in dead cap if the Lions cut him, which wouldn't be a huge dead cap, but it does sound like he's going to make the team. I mean, it is only a 1-year deal, so it's not like, okay, we're locking him in, but it's a pretty nice pay raise from where he was being on the practice squad and also being kind of a special teamer with Chicago. So this is just how they do it, and this is how I expect Brad Holmes to do it, kind of plug holes, and especially with guys that he can re-sign, guys that he's seen with on this team, on this defense, that they kind of know what they're going to bring to the table. They know, how they are personally. To be able to re-sign those guys to plug holes, I think it makes a ton of sense. But now let's dive into this. Let's talk about some moves that the Lions could make this offseason to save some money potentially for free agency. Now, this could also save money, of course, for like rookie signings and things like that. Before we get into how much money the Lions have, I do want to point out, and we've talked about this in strategy videos and things like that for the offseason, I really don't see Lions giving out deals to players that were not currently on the team, that are not re-signings, that are 3+ years under contract. I don't see the Lions doing many of those deals. They could do 1 or 2. I could see that, maybe a guy like Marcus Williams, because there are connections there, but I don't see many of those contracts coming. It is something that we've seen in the past with the Lions, is to give out those deals. Like you point to the last regime, whether it's Justin Coleman, Jesse James, Trey Flowers, you can kind of go on and on, Jamie Collins. I don't see the Lions really doing much of that. I think if they're going to give out deals like that, most of it will come from re-signings, whether that's a Tracy Walker or a Charles Harris or someone that was under contract that they saw play within this team. They could give out maybe 1 or 2 of those deals because it can be a little bit tougher to bring guys in on short-term deals, even if you're paying them some good money, if they're not really sure how much success your team is going to have. So sometimes those longer, stable deals, they get a little bit more intrigued by those. So they could give out like 1 or 2, but I don't see a ton of those deals happening this offseason. I think the Lions will fill some holes. They'll try to get some shorter-term deals in there. They'll look to re-sign their players. But we've talked about that. So let's talk about where the Lions are currently financially right now. Currently, the Lions are looking at about $20 million in cap space currently. This is according according to Over the Cap, they have the Detroit Lions at $19.6 million in cap space. That has fluctuated a little bit between about 19 and 21 million. Basically in that range currently is what's projected that the Lions have right now after the Josh Woods and the Jason Kabinda deals. It's important to keep in mind that you do have to have money, to sign your draft class. And the Lions, based on where their picks are projected to be right now, it would be just under about $10 million. So you also need money for that. Like if you're going to draft a player, you have to be able to sign the contract. So you still have to have money to take on that cap hit. Usually draft picks are not super expensive, but like the second pick, you're looking at about $7.5 million projected. So that's kind of expensive. Aside from that, when it really drops off to about like 1.8, and then you're looking at a lot of $1 million deals. It is all about how you set up contracts. Like the Lions could backload certain deals. They could, of course, add void years to certain deals. There's certain ways that you can set up contracts when you sign players that you're not, basically saying, okay, we gave him a 3-year, $18 million deal. It has to be $6 million for the season. You can set the contract up differently where maybe it's only $2 million for this year, but after that, it goes up. There's ways that you can set up those contracts. Basic Kabinda kind of had a backloaded deal. I mean, it was a cheap deal, so you don't really notice it. It kind of was backloaded a little bit there. I could see the Lions backloading re-signings for sure, because if you're going to backload a deal, you really want to feel like that player is going to be here for multiple years. You don't want to have that contract cut short, because then at that point, you put the money in the back of his contract, right? So you don't want to do things like that. Really, right now, the Lions are 13th in the NFL in terms of cap space. There are some teams that are in some awful situations, some bad ones, whether that's the Packers or the Saints. They've kind of been in that boat for a little while. The Lions also have some dead cap currently that they're paying this year. Basically, dead cap, all that means is that you're paying money for a guy that's not here. That's what that means. So if you cut a player early on his deal, it'd be like, let's say they had $10 million dead cap. It's because you're paying that, but the player's not there. So it's like, okay, I'm paying basically for nothing. That's what I'm paying for. The Lions have a little bit over $8 million in dead cap right now for this season, which puts them again about the middle of the pack. I think it's 14th in the National Football League. It's not a ton. It's not as bad as a team like the Texans, who have $35 million. A majority of our dead cap for this season comes from the Jamie Collins cut, which is about $6.3 million. And then another million is from the Tyrell Williams cut, because the Lions, I think they put a void year on there. That leads us to where we are now in cap space. About $20 million in cap space as of this very second. So how can the Lions add to that? Depending on how you set up contracts this offseason, you don't have to have a ton of money to get through free agency, but the Lions could find different avenues to save some money. So let's talk about these. These are in really no particular order, but it was about 5 guys that I noticed, and I was like, okay, I could see the Lions doing something with this to try to save some money. Let's start with the obvious one. Let's point out the elephant in the room. It's Trey Flowers. The Lions could save some money by moving on from Trey Flowers. Let's start there first. Let's start with a pre-June first cut. We'll talk about the post-June first cut in a second, but a pre-June first cut, what it's projected is that if the Lions made a pre-June first cut, like if they cut Trey Flowers, then they would save a little bit over $10 million, about $10.3 million in cap space, which would be nice. Now, there would be a dead cap of about $12.8 million, which it's kind of high, but again, then you're off the books. You don't have to worry about it going forward. It is kind of high because you're paying that for a guy that's not here, but that's because his cap hit this year is like $23 million. He was given a huge deal with our last regime. And the Lions, the past offseason, they cut a lot of those players, whether it was Justin Coleman's or Desmond Trufant or Christian Jones. They cut a lot of those deals. Trey Flowers is one of those guys that is still under contract, and it's a big deal. Also, now the Lions have the second pick in the draft, and they could be grabbing an edge there, which could also open up the door for the Lions looking to move on from Trey. The dead cap, it's not ideal, but at the same time, you would still be saving over $10 million, which would push you at this very second to about $30 million in cap space. So it is still a nice boost in terms of money that you have to spend this offseason. I mean, I think about it like this. That $10 million, you could possibly take that $10 million that you save from Trey Flowers and give that to Charles Harris, and you still could be saving a little bit of money, even if you re-sign the guy for this year. That's kind of how I look at it, and we know Trey Flowers with the injuries that he's dealt with, which has really been the main thing. Trey Flowers isn't a bad player. I wouldn't say he's been worth the $90 million. He's not a bad player. He's a good player. He is. He just hasn't been on the field enough, and that's kind of an issue. He hasn't had the production nearly at all for a guy that's getting paid that much money. It's way too much money that he's getting paid. So that's the first one. Now, you've probably seen, if you've been on Over the Cap, a post-June first cut. And yeah, technically that would save you more money. But how does that work? See, I really dove into this today, trying to get a real good understanding of it. I kind of had a feel for how it worked, and it's like, okay, it doesn't necessarily save you a lot of money. It doesn't necessarily save you money right now for free agency. So basically, the way I understand it, a quick explanation is, according to Over the Cap, if you made a post-June first cut with Trey Flowers, your cap space would go up $16 million versus $10 million, and your dead cap would only be $7.2 million. So it's like, okay, I'm saving more money. But that's kind of the case, but it's not really the case. Team can benefit, whereas when it comes to draft and things like that, they'll have money for these rookie deals. So if a team's struggling financially and they want to make sure that they have cap space for rookie deals, that way they have more money in the summertime for workouts, things like that to spend, then you do a post-June 1st cut, and that will save you more money post June 1st. Instead of taking on that original dead cap on, it would be able to spread it out through 2 seasons. So you would be technically saving a little bit more money. The issue with the post June 1st cut is that even if you designate it as a post June 1st cut, because you can do that, you can designate up to 2 players as a post June 1st cut before June 1st. The Lions could be like, hey, yeah, we're going to make Trey Flowers a post June 1st cut. They could do that. And then of course he'd be a free agent. And the benefit to the player is that he would be able to look for a new deal in free agency when teams actually have money. The downside to that to a team like the Lions is that the team, yeah, technically would have more money for the cap for that season. You don't have that in March. So the Lions wouldn't gain $16 million in March, even if they designated him as a post-June 1st cut, from my understanding. You wouldn't get that money in March. That wouldn't come into effect until, of course, after June 1st. It would actually kind of work against you because you would still be on the books for that player's salary for his contract up until June 1st. So you actually would be saving like no money until June 1st hit. And the issue with that is once you're past June 1st, free agency is very quiet. There isn't these big names out there. So there's way less players to sign. It's really for teams some extra money, of course, to sign some of their rookie class. Of course, it also benefits players. They're going to have an opportunity to go out there on the market in March when free agency is going on to try to get a deal when teams actually have more money to spend. So a post-June 1st cut, while it's possible, it's probably unlikely because it would actually benefit the Lions a lot more for this year's free agency if they were going to cut Trey Flowers to just make it a normal pre-June 1st cut. I don't expect the Lions to do that. As we said, you could also possibly look to do a little bit of a pay cut here. He's getting paid a lot of money. His cap at this year is $23.2 million. It's a lot of money that he's getting paid. $16 million of that is base salary. You could try to do a pay cut with him and see if he accepts the pay cut. It would, to me, have to be a pretty big pay cut though, because it can't be like, oh, okay, we're going to take $1 million off. That's not enough. There's just not enough effect there. There has to be a pretty nice pay cut that he's willing to take. It would keep him on the team, and it would also save you some money. That's something the Lions could look to do. There's also the restructure option, which I don't think the Lions would want to do. Take some of his base salary, make it a signing bonus, and then it would spread it out through the rest of the years on his contract. But then you're just putting more guaranteed money on his contract. You could look to do that if you're like, okay, we want to have this guy through the rest of his deal. But otherwise, it's probably not a move that you want to make. So I would say for the Lions, Trey Flowers, it's really the easiest way the Lions can come up with an extra $10 million to spend this offseason, which is a lot for free agency. For 1 year, for the 1 year of cap to have an extra 10 mil, it's a lot of money. It could be a very big signing that could end up being, or it could be multiple players, or it could be a guy like Charles Harris or a Tracy Walker. Heck, it could be both depending on how much they get paid and how you set the deals. So it's a lot of money that you could save. I would say that's kind of the one that everybody's been talking about, so I wanted to start with that one first. Next one that we have on here is Big V. Now, Big V is technically kind of in his out year. Like when you looked at how his contract was set up, this is the offseason where he has an out. The last 2 years, his dead cap would have been massive. That's not the case this year. So the Lions, again, they could keep it simple here and they could just cut Big V. Now, I don't think they want to do that. Big V is coming off of a good season, staying at the right guard position. He is 29 years old, which is something to keep in mind. I don't think they want to take away pieces from their offensive line if they don't have to, but he still is getting paid a lot to play the right guard position. So if the Lions did just do a pre-June 1st cut on a guy like Big V, they would save $3.5 million for this season with $5.2 million in dead cap. So there still would be some dead cap they are taking on. You would save a little bit of money, 3.5. It's not bad. That's one option the Lions could have with Big V. The other option with Big V that I think could be possible here, aside from just doing a straight up pay cut, because that's always nice, is a possible restructure. Now, we actually saw the Lions do a little bit of this at the end of December, okay? During the season, at the end of December, the Lions did a restructure with Big V to save an extra $1 million for the rest of the year, and we had all this COVID stuff going on. So they needed a little bit of extra money to make sure that they could make some of their signings and make the roster moves that they were making. So they've already done this a little bit, but the Lions could look to restructure Big V. Lions did want to restructure a guy like Big V. They could save up to almost $4 million for the season, which again would be taking, his base salary for this season, which is set at $6.5 million, transitioning that into a signing bonus and spreading it out through the last few years of his contract. The Lions could look to do that, save themselves just under about $4 million at the top end. Now, they, of course, could do less than that and save maybe $2 million, something like that. But they could save almost $4 million at the top end, according to Over the Cap, if they did a restructure with Big V. You do want to feel like you want to have that player with your team throughout the rest of his contract. And currently his contract goes through 2024. The other downside of that is you would be making the cap hit go up for the last 2 years of his deal for 2023 and 2024, which is currently at $11.2 million. It does go up in the last 2 years of his deal. So you would be adding on to that. So that would mean in 2023, 2024, the salary cap could go up, which would soften this blow. But let's just say it doesn't. You are spending more money in 2023 and 2024, and then you're just kind of adding to that. So that's the always thing with restructures. It helps you for now. It's basically, as people say, kicking the can down the road. The player likes it because it just makes it a signing bonus. They get the money immediately. The team saves some money for the current cap situation, but it doesn't necessarily help them for the next upcoming seasons. And I believe you can actually add void years to that. So they could add like 2 void years on top of that. But then, of course, a void year is basically you're paying a player money when he's not there. Now, the Lions have done this. They've added void years. They actually added a void year to Romeo's contract to soften it again a little bit. So I don't think you want to cut him. I think you want to keep him around. Maybe if you do a restructure, you just do a kind of small one to save a couple million if you need it for this season. Maybe their best bet here is just trying to do a pay cut with Big V and be like, hey, look, you're on a tackle deal and you're playing guard for us. We'll see what they do with that one, but it is one I had to bring up. This next one is quarterback Jared Goff. Another restructure idea here for our quarterback. Now, currently his out is basically set for 2023 because this past year and this year, his dead cap is super high. So you really can't move on from Jared Goff. And that's what we talked about. Basically, in 2 years, you were kind of locked with him. Could much easier move on from Jared Goff. I mean, you would still have some dead cap there, but it would be significantly lower than the first 2 seasons with Jared Goff. So that's why we don't expect him to go anywhere this offseason, but they could look to restructure. Now, like we just hit on with Big V, that would push his cap hit up for the last couple of seasons, but you still could save some money this year if you wanted to. And this has the biggest area of savings that you could actually have with Jared Goff. According to Over the Cap, you could save up to $16.7 million for 2022. Same issues apply to that. And plus, it kind of makes the out a little bit less of an out with Jared Goff. You'd still have an out. It'd still be much better than what it is right now. If you try to move on to Goff right now, it'd still be a much lower dead cap. 2023, his dead cap is set at $10 million. And of course, 2024, it's set at $5 million. Let's say they went for it all. They saved $16.7 million. According to Over the Cap, and his 2023 dead cap would be $18 million. And his 2024 dead cap would be $13 million. So the Lions could do something like this, but it would be kind of locking him in a little bit more, but it definitely has the most room that you can actually save money. Now, the Lions could do a smaller bonus than that, right? The Lions did this past off season to save some money as well, so it's something that they could look into. See the details over here for Jared Goff if the Lions did a restructure like this. Of course, they could definitely do less, but at the top end, according to Over the Cap, the big downside here is how much it pushes his cap number up for 2023 and 2024. Now, if the cap continues to go up every single year, as it seems to be doing, and next season the salary cap is just higher, then yeah, you could do these things. You may not feel it as much. However, as you can see, his cap number would definitely jump if you made this massive of a restructure. I would doubt if the Lions restructure Goff again, they would do this huge amount. You don't need to save $16.7 million. You could definitely do a much smaller amount than this. But if you did do $16.7 million, since he's under contract for 2023 and 2024, you can see how it pushes his cap number up $39 million in 2023 and $40 million in 2024. So I would doubt you do this amount. You'd probably go less than this for sure because you don't need to save $16.5 million, but maybe like half of that. I don't know, something in that range does lock him up a little bit more, but there still definitely is an out, especially when you're talking about a quarterback. I mean, you could definitely be much more locked in than this. Smaller amount, if you restructured a much smaller amount here of Jared Goff's contract, then that dead cap, because these numbers all on the right, all these numbers are at the high end. That's what it's all projected. So, of course, the dead cap number would drop a little bit for 2023 and 2024 if you restructured less of it. The next one is kind of a dark horse. It's Will Harris. Hasn't been a lot of talk about Will Harris, but he is going into the final year of his rookie deal. And because of that, you could save some money with just a straight up cut of Will Harris. There really is no restructuring to go on here. That wouldn't make any sense, but you could cut him. If you did a pre-June first cut with Will Harris, you would save $2.5 million and the dead cap would only be $238K. Not much at all because he's still on his rookie deal. So the Lions could look to do something like that. Now, of course, he's not very expensive, so you could just keep him for next year if you want to have him on the team. I think the Lions will make him more of a corner cornerback. We know we also could bring some safety depth as well. The way the Lions could look to do something like this is I could see if they try to bring back Bobby Price or a guy like Mark Gilbert, because both those guys are exclusive rights free agents, which would be much cheaper. So you'd still be saving about $1.77 million if you cut Will Harris. And let's say you brought back Bobby Price as an exclusive rights free agent and you cut Will Harris, you'd still be saving about $1.7 million and you could fill that roster spot back out. Some the Lions could consider. I do like Will Harris and I would like to see what he could continue to do for next year, because next year is the final year of his rookie deal. But if the Lions want to get out of it a little bit early, they could look to save some money. Now, of course, with all of this, there also is the trade side of it. Like if you could pull off a trade for Trey Flowers, that'd be awesome. You'd be saving the same amount of money as a PreJune First Cut would be, but you'd also get picks in return. That's really the best situation with any of these, because not only am I getting some money, but I'd also be getting some draft picks. Now, you could set that up differently. I mean, sometimes the team that's trading him away, they can agree to take some of the contract on. And the other one I have is Jamaal Williams. He's also on the final year of his deal. I don't want to move on from Jamaal Williams. I like the guy, and I don't want to take away from our running back stable that was successful last year. I mean, it was our best running game that we've had at least going back to 2009. Could go back much further. That probably goes back to when Barry played. This was a good running game the Lions have, and I would rather just continue to build on it. So I don't want to move on from Big V or Jamaal Williams. But Jamaal Williams is someone I have to bring up, because if you did cut him, it would be a $1.6 million dead cap. But again, he's on his final year. He was only brought in on a 2-year deal, and he would save you $3 million if you cut Jamaal Williams. I don't want to do it, but it is an option I have to bring up just because of the savings. Another option with Jamaal Williams could be extending the guy. He's not very old, so you could look to extend Jamaal Williams. And when you extend him, you could kind of restructure his contract a little bit to take some cap hit off of 2021. There is that option as well, to just bring him back for extra years for more seasons. But if the Lions were going to cut him, I would have to think their thought process behind that would be, okay, we have Jamar Jefferson. Godwin Igwebuike is an exclusive rights free agent. He's very cheap. We can bring him back and he'll have a year to practice as a running back. And then we can either draft someone or sign someone else. And then you have DeAndre Swift, of course, and Craig Reynolds. You could put a signing bonus in there, knock down the base salary a little bit. You could possibly look to add void years. You know, maybe you could just not even extend him, just add a void year to his contract. You could extend him for an extra season and then spread some cap out a little bit. So there's other ways aside from just cutting him that you could save a little bit of money here from Jamaal Williams. It wouldn't be a ton, but maybe like a little over maybe pushing $2 million that you could save if you did something like that, like an extension / renegotiation. The Lions may draft a running back again this season either way, but when Brad Holmes was in LA, they drafted 6 running backs from 2013 to 2020, and the average round they took those running backs was 3.3. So it's still possible, and that could be how they look at it, especially if they're going to move on from a guy like Jamaal Williams to save some money. I think Jamal's energy is great, and I don't think the Lions would do something like that. However, it is something that, again, I feel like I have to bring up. So there's always trade, there's always pay cut. You know, those are two always options that you could do. And there's, of course, other things aside from this. There's always restructures. You can always kick the can down the road. I don't think the Lions are going to want to do that with very many players, but sometimes you have to just to save a little bit of cap space. Depending on how you sign guys, you always could save money within it, depending on how you set up the contract. I don't see the Lions backloading many deals that are signings from other teams, unless it's re-signings. Re-signings, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions backload a little bit, because they have the feeling that, hey, if I'm re-signing Tracy Walker to a 4-year deal, I think he's going to be here for 4 years. That's the plan. We don't really need an out option with him, so we can backload that a little bit heavier. I think, though, that's how the Lions will probably look to approach this. There is some ways to save money. We're not in a bad financial spot. You just have to keep in mind there is the draft side, which is just under $10 million currently for what our projected picks were if we didn't move the board at all. There is that you got to have money for. Post-June First Cuts, they don't necessarily save you money for March, but they can save you money for signing draft picks and for summer workouts and to have more money at that time. I just wouldn't expect that with guys like Trey Flowers, because it really doesn't benefit them for free agency. Not in a bad spot. We're in the top half of the league. Of course, a guy like Michael Brockers, the biggest one for Brockers to me would be a pay cut, because I don't really think, cutting him doesn't really do you good. Cutting Michael Brockers barely saves you anything. It's like $500K. So there's really no benefit to doing that. The only thing with Michael Brockers is maybe trying to get a pay cut because he is under contract for 2 more seasons and he's not coming off his statistically best season. He's not coming off a great year for him. And another guy that is a possible restructure option is a guy like Romeo Okwara. Now, Romeo Okwara is under contract for 2 more seasons. He missed kind of the entire last year, and he does have a void year. They could save up to $6.6 million, from my understanding, with a restructure for this season. Same thing though applies, right? You're adding more cap hit to the upcoming seasons. You're kind of locking him in a little bit more. May not be a terrible option, but the Lions already kind of backloaded Romeo's contract when they signed him originally. His cap hit does go up though pretty high this season. I believe it's at like $14.5 million. Last year was much lower because they initially backloaded it, but we know we didn't get to see him last year, so it was kind of unfortunate. So you can always do things like that. You can always reset contracts. You can always backload. You can always sign guys like that. There's always ways to make the cap happen. It's just your outlook on how you want it to be down the road and how the future is going to set up for you. The big thing here is, as you can see with the cap hit, is since there is that void year in 2024, let's say the Detroit Lions restructured him as we see. If they did that, then you're adding cap to that 2024 void year, which is not great because he's not under contract. So in this scenario, which would be the maximum according to over the cap, yeah, you're saving $6.6 million for the season, which is nice. The 2023 cap hit, it's not insane. I mean, it is kind of high, but I guess it's not crazy. But then you have $6.8 million in this scenario on a void year, and you don't really want to do that. Lions could possibly look to extend him. I don't know if they do that because he didn't really get to play last year, and they don't know how he's going to play in this defense. But if they felt very confident that's like, hey, it's going to work. We believe it's going to work. You could look to extend him like Jamaal and do a similar thing where you add a couple of years to his contract. Maybe you'd add an extra year to his contract. You could take off some of the base salary from this season to save a little bit for this year. Maybe put another void year on his contract. I mean, you could do a couple little things in there to save some money. But again, this is the top end. When I put all these, like scenarios of restructures in there, I went top end, like what we could do at the maximum. And then, of course, you can always do less than that amount. We'll see what the Lions look to do. What do you think the Lions will do? What moves do you think they'll make this offseason? Any major ones that stick out to you? What do you think they'll do with Trey Flowers? That's the question below. Thank you, Prime, for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Oh, and by the way, Tuesday, Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes are set to meet with the media to talk about the Combine, okay? That's coming up, I think, next week, the 1st. March 1st. March 1st is the Combine. So we'll be here to cover that and talk about that. It's interesting because of how they look at the Combine, right? They kind of look at the numbers, but they also trust the eye test, and they have the GPS side of things, and they just kind of look at it as a check mark. But anyways, we'll talk about that more when we comes here. Until then, thank you, Prime, for watching, and I'm out.